It's time we had the talk, nephew. You've completed your studies, captained a successful trading mission, and are ready to join the inner circle of the clan. Yes, settle yourself down. Help yourself to a libation. Get your tendrils wet. You'll need it. There are many things you will need to learn, and some you must unlearn. The first question. What is the basis of our clan's power? Oh, you think it's trade? A good answer. We are the foremost clan in the Mercantile League. Our antimatter fuels a third of the starships operating through the Empire. Our transatlantix are present in every advanced good produced in the sector. Our trade ships call on every starport in the Empire. But incorrect. That is the source of our wealth. What is the source of our power? Oh, the network of friends and allies we have built, treaties and oaths that may be called upon in times of need, the honor and prestige of our clan, our wise and sagacious leadership through the generations has led us to construct trade deals that are of mutual benefit so that cooperation is obviously preferable to conflict. That as one prospers, all prosper. Yes. And in an ideal universe, that is all the more that should be required. But this is not an ideal universe. What of those who refuse our friendship, who choose conflict? I see you glancing at my sentinels here. Yes, the silent guard. You do not yet fully understand, but are closer. Bear with me. I'm getting to a point. The threat of that force is the foundation upon which everything else is built. When one prospers, one draws jealous attention and temptation. If you cannot defend your treasure, it shall be taken. By sharing in that prosperity, you turn potential enemies to allies, and those you cannot make friends will be outnumbered. All that we build, all that we do in peace, will not last unless it can be defended. You know the Free Galactic Conventions. Do not enslave sapients. Do not use atomics in planetary atmospheres. Do not give advanced technology to pre-sapients. All three rules relate to the adversary. The rise and fall of the First Empire in the Dark Age. Yes, this is a history lesson, but it has bearing, if you will indulge. Sapient species, no matter their lineage, have independently evolved an empathy gene, a revulsion to committing acts of violence against others of their kind, or through negligence or indifference, allowing harm. Those who do not will destroy themselves. This instinct does not extend to other sapiens, which is why conflict still exists in this galaxy. This is a natural selection filter, and the most quarrelsome species will self-terminate before there's a risk of them overrunning the galaxy. And even against other species, there are measures no sapient would ever take. Warfare is still civilized, as contradictory as that sounds. Pre-sapiens, for all their intelligence, have not yet evolved this gene, and turn against their own without mercy, and do not differentiate between lawful combatants and civilians. In their natural environment, war has no rules. When you remove a pre-sapient from his natural environment, and give him unsupervised access to advanced technology, there is no compunction, no remorse. The unthinkable is thought, and there are no restrictions. This is total war, and that's how you get the adversary. That, nephew, is a galaxy we do not want to live in. In the time leading to the First Empire, sapient species would use pre-sapients as soldier slaves. Exposure to direct violence is damaging to any intelligent mind, and sapients cannot endure direct combat without going insane. Even pre-sapients are not immune, just less susceptible. A lower natural intelligence meant greater resilience to psychological trauma, and it was generally understood that whoever was shooting the gun could not be expected to maintain the gun. A good soldier was a brute, a trained animal. That's just how things were. On a warship there was a strict hierarchy. There would be a small command staff of sapients supervising a crew client species technicians, and pre-sapients would do the fighting, be it in gunships or drop pods as infantry. Someone, somewhere, found a pre-sapient species on an unknown planet, and appreciated their capacity for violence. Well, lovely soldiers they would make. If left to their own devices, they surely would have extinguished themselves. But they were enslaved and set to work, and work they did, helping to forge the First Empire in galactic history. Their masters grew fantastically wealthy, and over time became lazy. Their clever slaves stepped into the void. They could not only shoot the guns, but also maintain them. There was no need for separate technicians. They demonstrated capacity for planning and strategy. Their masters delegated more and more military responsibility to their slaves, until the point that the ships were wholly crewed by pre-sapients. Killers who could not just shoot the guns but maintain them. Killers who could operate and repair starships. Killers who could plan and conduct entire military operations on their own recognizance. They could design and construct the next generation of weapons themselves. The very thought of it still brings terror to this day, nephew. This power imbalance did not escape the slave soldiers' notice. An inevitable coup later, and it was their empire, and expansion redoubled. The former slaves did not forget the cruelty of their masters, and applied those lessons with vigor. Such was their tyranny that they united the entire galaxy against them. The war was on a scale inconceivable. Fleets clashed in the night, planets burned, civilizations were snuffed out. The very written records were attacked by infravors, so that history itself was nearly erased. The war ended simply because there was hardly anyone left to kill. A few percent of the pre-war population left scattered in pockets across the ruins of a galaxy. So much knowledge was lost we didn't even have a record of who the adversary was, how they looked, what they called themselves. We didn't know who enslaved them. Few primary sources existed and only in fragments. Most of what is public knowledge is conjecture from archaeological efforts. Even finding a fragment of an imperial sigil was noteworthy. It took thousands of years for the pitiful few survivors to rebuild. This second empire we live in is a result of their efforts. Those galactic conventions were agreed upon as a minimal standard of civilization, to prevent a repeat of the past. The client and patron system was still in use, but in a far more equitable fashion. Conflicts will still happen. It's not a peaceful galaxy, but not the wholesale slaughter and destruction of the past. You can't make a market out of a wasteland. So, what does that history have to do with us? Our illustrious clan founder had an idea. At the time, we did not have the Silent Guard. Because we lacked that foundation, we did not have many friends. We did not have the means to build our wealth. In the food chain, we were scavengers. He thought that he could gain an edge with a better client species, one with intelligence, but not quite as great a capacity for violence. The real mistake of the slavers, whoever they were, was in getting lazy, the fool. So, on some unremarkable planet in parts unknown, he found a small colony of pre-sapients. They clearly weren't native. They were living as hunter-gatherers. The ruins of a starship lay smashed across the landscape. No signs of the sapiens who crewed it, so they must have died in the crash, and their clients lived on. The pre-sapiens did not look promising at first. Physically unremarkable, fractious and prone to intraspecies violence, but brain scans showed they were capable of being trained. So our clown founder captured a breeding population, salvaged the data core from the wreck and sterilized the site. Yes, he used an atomic, but it wasn't a civilized world, so there was no one to notice. That was hardly his worst crime, as you will soon learn. Our founder set up a breeding and training program. The adults, of course, were habituated to a primitive lifestyle and could not adapt to the change. But the children demonstrated that amazing capacity for learning. They could learn languages, logic, science, and strategy. One could always mistake them for sapient, if not for their terrifying capacity for fratricide. There are stronger combatants, with fangs and claws and venom. There are smarter species. But if you plot strength and intelligence on a two-axis graph, and you will see no other known species comes close to being as intelligent or skillfully violent. They were ideal soldiers. You might think someone would have suspected something at this point, but opportunity has a way of murdering caution in its sleep. Our founder forged ahead. And so we adopted the Silent Guard as our clan's private military. Our founder wanted to maintain exclusivity, keep their identity secret and monopolize their services. The Guard would never let their true form be seen by others, always hidden in an encounter suit. Upon death, biological disruptors would trigger, vaporizing their body and all genetic traces. This mystique would enhance their legend, and we could use that to our advantage, and we did. The Silent Guard would fight like fanatics, with suicidal disregard for their own lives. Their very reputation developed to such a point that opponents would surrender the moment they took the field. After the betrayal at Kalan, we had no excuse. If you recall your clan history, nephew, this is when our rivals in the Mercantile League sought to eliminate our senior families at the Decennial Conference. Private militaries were forbidden at the conference as a matter of etiquette, and of course our rivals had theirs prepared for an ambush. Not only that, traitors in our own clan cooperated with the plot. That they could even agree to take part makes me question whether we ourselves are truly sapient. They had authority outside the circle, but would never advance to be within. The plot, if successful, would see the clan in a junior position, but their position within the clan elevated, a trait they found equitable. Their role would be to prevent a timely response by our own military. Not only did the Silent Guard penetrate this plot, they commandeered and flew starships to Kalan to effect the rescue. Flew starships? It should have been obvious. Our grateful leaders refused to see it, and so we continued along, growing in wealth and stature. All the while, the Silent Guard gained more and more power behind the scenes. One of their own managed to decode that salvaged data core, by the way, something our best scientists could not. It confirmed what we should have suspected. We had repeated the very same mistake of the slavers in the First Empire. But the Silent Guard, these humans, as the core named them, they saw their history and wept. They wanted a different future, and so they became silent partners in our clan, equal but unknown. And this is the secret of our power, dear nephew. And it is not ours alone. They see our arrangement as mutually beneficial. They say we have a capacity for diplomacy. We are good at making friends, and our alliances have made the galaxy a safer place. We should each play to our strengths. Together, we are quite a team.